Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Dharshan Shanthamurthy. As I mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of SISA. We are all excited to come together here today to release the top 5 forensic learnings report. And we are glad to have our chief guest, Ms. Rama Vedhashree, CEO of DSCI, to be our chief guest. We've got a distinguished panel, Renju from SISA, who leads our forensic services, Mr. Viswanath, Krishnamurthy, who's the Chief Risk Officer of NPCI, Mr. Sanjeev, Kumar, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Pine Labs, and Mr. Madhusudhan, who's from Hinduja Global Services. So we're all excited to have a wonderful session going ahead. Just a few disclaimers as I proceed forward. This webinar, which we are doing, is solely for educational purposes, and it does not construe any professional judgment on, as we need to go by facts and opinions on a particular case to case. So we do not construe anything against or for whatever we speak today. It's completely for educational purposes. Housekeeping, most of you would be on mute. I would also request all the panelists to also mute themselves if they're not speaking. And I would also, and the panelists are muted in any which way. This webinar is for 60 minutes, which includes question and answer session. We intend to make it as engaging as possible. So, please do type in your questions in the question window of this GoToMeeting, the GoToWebinar. There's a question window for each one of you should be visible. In case you have any questions, and I would appreciate if you can shoot out all the questions there. We are excited to be able to answer all those questions as much as we can within the time permits. And if we can't, then we will have it forwarded to panelists to reply to your emails or questions at a later point in time. So the agenda for us today, we've got a tight agenda. So we've got the keynote address by Madam Rama Vedhashree, and who'll also be launching the SISA top 5 learnings report based on our forensics. And then, of course, bulk of this session is going to talk about, is going to be the panel discussion between some of the leading minds that we've got on a combination of cybersecurity and in the payments world. And then, of course, we have a closing remark, and we close this session. So that's the kind of agenda that we've got for today. A quick poll for the audience here. I just quickly launch a poll just to understand whether this makes sense. So the first question is, do you think the learnings from forensic investigation can actually help organizations improve security posture? So one quick question, if people can quickly answer that, take 30 seconds and quickly answer it. It will really be helpful. Okay, great. So we've got about 93%, which essentially says that yes, we could actually learn from these breaches, and rightly so. And that's the entire purpose of this webinar that we are doing today. That is largely for the purposes of taking these learnings and seeing whether we can improve the security posture. So at any point in time, we are not trying to construe anything negative against these organizations which have been compromised or breached, but largely take those learnings and see how we can protect organizations going forward. So that's the thing. And so how have we written this report? The sources of this report, for those of you who have seen this for the first time, this is our second year of the report. The basis of this report has been mostly our forensic investigations. As many of you would be knowing that we are one of the leading forensic investigators, even approved by the PCI Security Standards Council as a PFI, as a payment forensic investigator. And we globally do these investigations. And so one of the sources are for those investigations, the PFI work that we do. The other is also our internal forensic investigation. We do a lot of forensic investigations on behalf of organizations who requested them. So we do that, and of course supplemented by various set of audits. and we identify what is the cause of the breach and what is the contribution of the breach before we actually publish these results. So the results which we have today, which we are launching, would be based on these investigations, and of course the various audits and testing that we have done. But the primary source has been the forensic investigation, and each investigation essentially has a cause of breach and contribution of breach. Further of which we can always discuss later on in the panel. So quickly, without further ado, I would want to introduce our chief guest, Ms. Rama Vedhashree. She's the CEO of DSCI. We all know her in the cybersecurity space, and she is one of the leading warriors for cybersecurity in the country, who engages with with the government and various industry bodies for driving cybersecurity initiatives in India. So we are glad to have her as part of our event today. She's been part of NASSCOM earlier, and then before moving to DSCI. So I'll probably hand it over to Madam Rama Vedhashree for doing the keynote address.
Thank you, Dharshan, and welcome to my fellow panelists and experts from the industry, and all the delegates who have joined, and I'm sure a huge community of forensic professionals would have joined this launch. It's always heartening for me and for the team at DSCI to be associated with any initiative from the security product industry and the services industry from India, because it's always a sense of pride, because one of our key charter is to promote this industry. I've been in the technology industry for 30+ years, of course not from the forensics domain. And we in the industry, particularly the Indian services products industry, we don't do a good enough job of sharing our learning and best practices, publishing research reports, which will be a learning for the community, for the customers, and for the rest of the professional communities. So it's always heartening to see a report like this, which I would say, I mean, for those of us who are slightly familiar with the kind of training that goes on in defense services or in law enforcement, there are always sessions called Lessons from the Trenches. Have you heard of that? Right? Lessons from the Trenches, which is actual practitioners coming and doing the session for probationers. And even in the previous world, I've been a database specialist. Whenever we go to these marquee technical sessions, there's always that, specialist database administrator coming and doing this, under the hood sessions or lessons from the trenches. I would say a report like this, which is published by SISA, which I'm told is the second year in a row they're publishing this report, pretty much like Lessons from the Trenches, where I think they have a global footprint of 1,000+, investigations that they must have done in the last year or last few years, and learnings like this, because this kind of inside information from the practitioners who have been supporting customers of all sizes across all verticals and across all countries, it's very difficult to get, particularly because there's so much of confidentiality and regulation around breach investigation and those reports. I understand the report is backed by both primary, based on their investigations, and based on the secondary data of audit. So I'm sure it's a good learning for the CISO and the CXO community, because while overall in cybersecurity, the preparedness, there's always a gap, and we need to keep ahead of the cyber criminals and the increased cyber attacks. Particularly, we see that while the enterprises worldwide and in India have made significant progress in their cybersecurity preparedness, but incident response and emergency response and incident investigation and the in-house forensic expertise to be able to investigate a breach or be prepared when a breach really happens, I think we still have a long way to go, even in the best of enterprises worldwide in India. And globally, when we look at it, and in India, the expertise of talent in forensics to be able to do breach investigation and support customers is growing. There's a big talent gap. So it's extremely important that organizations like SISA and the peer organizations in the services industry step up the forensics capability in the country. We in DSCI have been very focused on that. We have a big cybercrime investigation training research center, which is essentially like a center of excellence focused on forensics capability building. While we support primarily law enforcement and judiciary and sometimes the national nodal organizations of government, we do partner with the government whenever or with the industry when some specific cases. We only provide investigation support. So we're trying to scale up that research. When we did a research report recently on domestic market and we spoke to a lot of CISOs, almost all of them said that investments in terms of both people, process, and technology in incident response and incident management and breach investigation is one of their focus areas, and that's expected to take a spike given the current situation where the whole world is going digital and vital. Even if you look at the regulators, right? Regulators have put a lot of focus, whether it's RBI or any of the other regulators, in incident response. CERTs across the world and CERT in India is putting a lot of focus on building not only the in-house capability, but have those trusted expert partners to be able to respond whenever there is a breach. So I believe a report like this will not only be a report for a CXO, but I'm sure it will also be a report which the forensic community can look at, the professional community can look at as they are investigating multiple cases, while of course confidentiality of the business and the incident is extremely important for this professional community. It's also important they figure out a way to capture all the learnings from all the customer work that they do, so that the broader community grows and builds the talent, understands from experienced industry experts, because this could also be this kind of, while this is a overall management view report, if there are specific cases that are sanitized into generic case studies, I'm sure the forensic professors and students in our MTech, they will also have a lot of learning. So it's extremely important that we share learning, and I'm happy that SISA is doing this and they will continue to do this. I hope they come up with, preserving all the confidentiality, they can come up with more deep dive case studies so that not only customers but the rest of the industry community can. So I compliment you on this, and I keep continuing to do your good work in supporting customers worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your address, and we are glad to have you launch the event, launch the report, and we will be publishing the report moving forward. It will be available on our websites. So due to the COVID-19, we are not able to do this face-to-face, but all said and done, we've caught up with trying to do things virtually. So thank you so much for your time. So quickly swap up to our thing. So this is our forensic learnings report. I would probably give more details as to how you could actually get this, get a copy of this report once we finish with the panel. So one quick question that I've got for the audience here is, before we get into the panel, is just to see what kind of mix we've got. I just quickly run a poll to find out which industry you belong to, so that the panelists here could make it very contextual to the questions that you ask. So I'll just launch a poll in terms of which industry do we all represent here. So we'll give it quick 30 seconds. All right, fantastic. Okay, so I'll just close the poll now quickly. All right, and then, so we've got the benefit of the audience here. This is the poll that we have got. We've got about 20% from the banking vertical. We've got about 40% from ITES, which is the BPOs. And then, of course, we've got 22% from FinTech, and others is about 19%. So that's a pretty fair mix that we've got today. I think with that, I would switch off the presentation and then go into the panel mode. So we could start, as I mentioned earlier, this we want to keep this as engaging as possible with the audience here. We've got a big number, almost close to 300 people on this webinar today. So we are excited, and we believe that this has to be highly interactive, and hence we have kept this session with with a distinguished panel. So please feel free to shoot questions. As I mentioned, there is a questions window, and we've got I'll be happy to answer any of the questions that we keep getting. But I would start off with the first basic thing which we've all here gathered in terms of in the cybersecurity landscape. I'll probably start with Madhu, because I see him as the first person on the panel here. So the first question is for Madhu. In terms of cybersecurity landscape, what kind of breaches has influenced largely the IT/ITES sector, right? So one couple of things that we are trying to keep for the benefit of everyone in the participants. I forgot to mention this, is that we want to answer as many questions as possible. So the panelists are trying to keep it as crisp and as to the point, so that all of us can get the best out of this panel. So that's the intention. If you have any detailed set of answers or questions that you have, you can always feel free to shoot to any one of us. I'm sure all of us are connected, can get connected on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, or you can route it through SISA itself. So with that, I think Madhu, if you want to start answering with that question.
Sure. Thank you, Dharshan. Okay, first of all, the IT/ITES industry is highly regulated. It is governed by both national and international laws. Now, one important thing that matters here is the customer's information, our customers' information, and so on. And at the end, so this whole industry is governed by various regulations, as I mentioned. It could be a HIPAA, or Consumer Protection Act, GDPR, and if you look at the Indian IT Act, Section 43A and Section 72 clearly specifies as to what is the role of a body corporate and what happens in the event of a breach. Okay, so now the most important factor here is an event of a breach that may occur. So that can bring in reputation damage. It can bring in civil money penalties and so on. Now, if you look at the data breach investigation report of 2019, it says out of the total security incidents that have occurred, 24% of the security incidents are related to ransomware. The second report is Ransomware Marketplace report. It says that as of last year, the downtime due to a ransomware attack was at somewhere around 10.2 days. But if you see the latest report that is available, it says it has now been increased to 16.2 days on an average, which means as there is more downtime, there will be more revenue loss. More than that, what happens is the average cost, if you compute the average cost of downtime, it is working out to 23 times higher than an average security breach that may occur. Additionally, maybe internally, when we look at our own security events that have taken place, if the events are not addressed proper, they could lead into a major damage and could bring in multiple reputation damage. So, that's one of the key points that we should always keep in mind.
Thanks, Madhu. Sanjeev, what are the major cybersecurity breaches in the past which has influenced your being one of the largest acquirers in the country? How has it changed your perspective or your organization's perspective?
So I think Dharshan, I'll keep it very, very crisp, and without going into the detail of phishing and all this stuff, there are 2 points I like to make here, and I think one will cover what Madhu has said already, right? So the first one is Heartbleed, which started in 2012, came into public in 2014, and in fact, the OpenSSL 1.0, right, which had that you had this 64 KB block could have come to the computer, and especially for the companies like us, those who have the data in transit card and on the RAM, this could be like 64 KB of cardholders' data could have potentially reached out of your this thing in every SSL handshake, right? So that was one. So immediate movement to SSL, 1.2 has really, helped there. So that was one learning, that we should immediately, whenever, don't really wait for the audit in our report. Don't really wait for, forensics of some other company. Work, on your own. Learn quickly as you can. Nobody is going to spoon feed you, right? Second thing is, the second biggest learning was the SMB issue, right? So SMB, I think it is must resonating well. The server message block issue of 2017, the infamous one, right? And then at this point, I will re-invoke what Madhu said, this ransomware thing. Ransomware, I think in my view, if you ask me, I categorize them into two parts. One is for incentive, that's still better. Other is for destruction, that's the worst. So when I talk about incentive, WannaCry, somebody, so it's a dropper, right? Somebody creates a dropper, puts it there into three parts. It does the self unpackaging. And then the first part is your script for encryption and decryption. Second component is the key. Still you have the keys, right? And the third part is that you have the Tor, right? The Tor, the infamous, right? Which can, route and ping pong, and it can create the IP jumping. You will not be able to know that who is shooting what where, right? So these three. So WannaCry did the damage, and at least in this case, by paying the extortion money or the ransom money, in some cases, if the person who has sent you an email has somehow kept the private key, you were able to get the data back, but I haven't seen any. But the second one was not Petya, right? The famous shipping company which lost $300 million in revenue, and the intent was that they lose. It was very clear, because what happens is, the basic difference, you have the script again. The second thing is, you don't have the keys. You create a random RSA pair of higher strength, delete the private key, encrypt the disk. The intent is that you don't want the person who is getting duped to really recover anything. So this was, destructive. So in order to avoid all these things, while you may have, I think as an organization, it is the duty and discipline not only of the auditor, not only of the CISO, every employee. This, the compliance and the security has to be a culture. And I think I personally have brought, I personally say that don't use the word compliance. It means that for a period of time, you are complying to what someone has said. Adhere to it. Adhere to it as a practice, live it. Otherwise, even a basic script, if you double click, you don't know what can go wrong, right? So I think I will try to be crisp, and you can keep going. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Thanks. So Viswanath, your take, especially since being a chief risk officer of for National Switch, what major cybersecurity incidents has kind of shaped you from an approach, from a strategy standpoint? And yeah, so it'd be nice to hear from you. Viswanath, we are not able to hear you. Viswanath, you're muted, I guess. We're not able to hear you.
Yeah, I think I've been unmuted now. Great. Okay. So, Dharshan, I think a couple of incidents has kind of impacted India in a big way. The first one, and specifically the financial sector. The first one, which I would kind of recollect, is the 2016, processor level compromise which happened, and suddenly customers realized that their cards are getting used to do cash withdrawal from ATMs in China. So suddenly they realized that money is going out of China from their account, and a lot of panic kind of set in. So of course, a few of the banks in the industry realized what was happening. They had some real-time capabilities, etc. So they were able to kind of block, arrive at a point of compromise incident, and block the withdrawals which were happening out of China. So that was the first incident. So subsequent forensic investigation on that kind of led to a lot of revealing aspects as to how the processor got compromised and what happened and what was the kind of impact for India. It was close to 3.6 million cards, and that was I think after that RBI had also come out with a very detailed cybersecurity guidelines for all banks and players in the financial sector. So that was one which kind of changed the way we look at a lot of things in the financial sector. The second one is about 2018. again, a bank, a cooperative bank, and owing to a malware which was found in the switch of the bank, it kind of started sending approval messages for fake transactions. So ATM cash out started happening. So it was a big incident and a lot of coverage in the media as well. Almost close to 70 crores of rupees got withdrawn within 24 hours from about some 28 or 30 countries. So that was the kind of impact. So both this, I think, had kind of changed the way the financial industry at least looks at cyber security. And of course, a few other incidents such as the Marriott or Starwood breach, which happened again, kind of customers' personal information also got compromised in those breaches, plus the card information also. So people started thinking more about is card on file secure? So those kind of questions were being pondered upon. And so again, the focus again came back into PCI DSS, importance of PCI DSS, what we need to do as an organization to protect sensitive data, etc., etc. So I think these are the three major incidents which I would say in recent times, which kind of got everyone in the financial industry thinking. And of course, it reiterated the importance of cybersecurity.
Sure. So at this point in time, I'd like to take some questions which we've been getting a lot from the audience. So I think first one question which we have got, which is very interesting, is maybe this is a question for probably one question is, how risky is shadow IT? Are there any cases of theft through shadow IT infrastructure? Does anyone want to take that? Are there any risks? So one question that we're getting from the audience is, how risky is shadow IT, and is there any risks of theft through shadow IT infrastructure? Sanjeev, do you want to give it a shot?
No, so I think what I mean. Be it your own IT or be it shadow IT. I think if I get it right, as long as you have security postures correct, right, and as long as you are able to ensure that even if you outsource to somebody, even if it is outsource service, or you are using a managed service, but you don't defy the principles which you have, I don't think it really is going to impact you, right? So if you are using for messaging, let's say some third party messaging, right, will you, or for a mailing you are using a third party services, right? For some other stuff you have also. But the point is, are your guidelines and principles being adhered to or not? So let's say a simple case, we outsource. These days there is a very prevalent practice of not having your infra for laptop and desktop, right? But at least what you can define is that the hardening policies of OS hardening and all the stuff the guidelines are adhered to. So essentially the practices which you follow, you should ensure that your partners you are outsourcing to, or some services which you are taking, those partners also adhere to those. As long as you do that, I don't think there's any harm, because it is paramount to start light and be infra light. You can't create everything on your own.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Sanjeev. Renju, you want to quickly comment on that shadow IT? Are there any risks to shadow IT, or do you want to add on to what Sanjeev mentioned?
Sure. So, as what we have analyzed is whether it is a shadow IT part of it, or with the internal systems. End of the day, it depends on the controls that you are actually going to deploy. Now, during the recent 2 months with the work from home scenario, we have identified few of the breaches were your HRMS, that's your human resource management system. Earlier, it was only visible to you within your internal network. Now, suddenly, due to work from home scenario, you have opened it across the external world. And we have at least 3 investigations where that your HRMS application has been compromised and has been an incident response. So the question from a generic point of view is that whether it's shadow IT or whether cloud or any infra that you're going to use, it's end of the day, it's about the controls that you're going to deploy and about what monitoring that you can carry out.
Sure, I think that answers that first question. So So I mean, we're getting a lot of good questions coming in. One question that comes in is that can you give us some visibility on the top 5 learnings? So maybe Renju, you want to quickly. So the idea was while we are launching the report is obviously going to be available to all of us. We can do that, but I would just ask Renju to quickly give. And just to also add context, our learnings are these are learnings. These are not threats. These are not top 5 threats. But what we believe is what can we do from these things from the forensic investigation we've seen, and what are the learnings? So Renju, if you quickly want to overview, I don't want you to go through all the 5 learnings, but quickly 2 minutes if you want to just quickly do that, because there's a question which says that we were expecting the 5 learnings. So what are the 5 learnings?
Sure. So basically, the first learning is our frequent patching. So I'm sure that all of you are aware of how patch is critical to environment. And in all our investigations in the last year, we have identified 98% of the ingress point, as initial ingress point, has been a phishing email which could have exploited a backdoor by one of the vulnerabilities. So not only just Windows, but all the applications that you have. Even recently, the Zoom vulnerability, I'm sure that you'll be aware of. So the first one is definitely frequent patching. That's the first learning. Second learning is application security testing part of it. Reason being that, again, due to our investigations, the ingress point that we identified has in 2018 it was around 40%. 2019 it's around 40% of our PFI cases, and in the recent during work from scenarios that has again increased drastically, because it's not about a critical application. I'm sure that we'll definitely have safeguarded with critical applications, because it's about the other applications. The recent 2 months is the HRMS application which has come to our notice. I'm sure that because these days everything has a web interface, and my question is that out of say 10 web interface apps that you have in your organization, how much of the apps have you secured? You have definitely secured your internet banking, critical applications, but not all the apps just web interface. So from an intruder perspective, they just need one small vulnerability to penetrate, and can happen from any of your apps with our code. And why we consider app security as the second biggest learning is it's still the old vulnerabilities of SQL and command injection vulnerabilities, which has been mostly exploited for the ingress point of view. The third one is the intelligent monitoring part of it. Why intelligent monitoring is because when we do our investigations, we only rely on logs. So logs constitute 90% of our investigation thing, and all the information on how the attacker has came into the network, how they did do lateral movements, how they have been stayed within the network for 180 days, 200 days, and was able to exploit the data, are still available in clear-cut format within the logs part of it. So there has been definitely an intelligent monitoring that has been carried out. We are rest assured that most of these breaches could have been identified quite long back. Because from SISA perspective, we believe that we cannot prevent a breach. That is, we cannot prevent someone from ingressing a network or penetrating to a network, because it's unhuman to control or mitigate all the vulnerabilities which might be present within your organization. But can you detect it? Because most of the cases, detection goes for a toss. The fourth one is the access management, because for the lateral movement, there has been quite a lot of lateral movements without proper access control, because it's a bad password, using the service account, and not deploying to certificates properly. And the fifth one is the incident response and forensic analysis part of it. Why incident response is that when we revert back with an incident, especially for SOC team and revert back an incident, most of the organization doesn't have a playbook or an idea on what to be carried out next, especially the IT team. So definitely, if there's a clear-cut playbook on what steps should I take in case this kind of incident happen, then definitely we could have prevented and prevented and got back from the breach part of it. Especially in case of ransomware, because in ransomware, the incident playbook becomes very, very crucial because we have very less time.
Sure. I'm sure we would do a complete webinar, or we could do a full-blown webinar for each learning. So thanks for keeping that crisp, Renju. I'm sure as a forensic investigator, you would want to talk on each one of them and explain a lot more detail. The next question which we've got is for Viswanath. I think one question which I will try to mix it with the questions that I had. Viswanath, this question is for you. Question is from Devki Raikar, if I can name here. So she says that she's asking a question, as a national switch, what role you are playing to improve the overall security posture, and what I'm sure NPCI takes a lot of measures to improve the ecosystem as well, because you are a national switch. So could you want to give a quick comment on what initiatives that NPCI is taking, and also largely the other question that I had is mostly in terms of how the boardrooms are talking about it. So you can probably answer both of them, Viswanath.
Sure. See, first is that there could be many attempts on us. The fraudster needs to succeed only once, but whereas we have to succeed every single time. So the board is now cognizant of the fact, and thanks to some of the recent incidents, everyone is viewing cybersecurity with utmost seriousness. So a lot of steps have been taken at NPCI as well as a national switch. So what we have also done is kind of provided an additional layer of security to the switches of the banks directly. So when it comes to cashier attacks, etc., so we kind of step in and we can kind of do a damage limitation exercise. So that's another activity which we do. And we also work very closely with all the financial players with whom we work, our clients, in terms of areas such as network security and compliance as well. So that to a large extent, kind of takes care certain aspects. So mandatory audits, tech audits, etc., are done, and the results are submitted. So that kind of helps largely. So with respect to the question on the boardroom discussions, etc., as I told you, the board is really cognizant about the cybersecurity importance, and you can say that so some of the investments which goes into the cybersecurity are pretty expensive, right? So of course it's it's definitely a required investment, but those are definitely costly. So ROI is one important aspect which the board looks at. So therefore we also have to look at our responses and mostly in the area of prevent, detect, and response. What are the steps which we have taken in each of these segments, and what is the kind of return or kind of savings which we are getting? So savings could be classified as if not for this, there could have been a downtime, and therefore that could lead to a financial outage. Of course, the regular reports are sent to the board in terms of our BCP drills, the DR drills, red team exercises which happen, vulnerability assessment, the SOC monitoring responses, of course, AppSec and penetrating pen test as well. So all these are the aspects which the board kind of is updated on a quarterly basis. And we also have developed a kind of a cybersecurity score. And so the board is very keenly monitoring how the cybersecurity score is evolving quarter on quarter. Various important aspects on the overall cybersecurity is covered in such manner. And any exceptional scenarios which come in, any kind of interesting finding which we get, let's say from dark web monitoring, anything of that sort, those things are also highlighted to the board. That's also placed to the board's attention. So this is how largely the board kind of plays a role in terms of I'm keeping a tab on the cybersecurity sphere. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Viswanath. I think that gives it's also nice to know that as a national switch, you are making sure that the ecosystem is secure, by playing a lot of compliance and driving compliance as well as adherence, to use Sanjeev's word, and at the same time, also the board visibility is also having in terms of what you're doing. So the question that I've got here is I think maybe quickly to Madhu. So I think this, I wouldn't want to, it's from Prasad, but I wouldn't want to, mention his organization's name for the intent of confidentiality, because we don't want to put that organization in the forefront here. So but it's largely from ITITS company, which says that my company actually works from home 80%, 80 to 85%. What are the key critical risks and cyber attacks do you foresee, and precautions each and every employee needs to take from work from home? And I know this can go for a long, but Madhu, quick 2-minute answer for that.
Okay, sure. See, the first and foremost is in a work from home scenario. So the associate works from home, and one critical aspect that can happen here is the phishing and wishing. Normally, what happens? There could be a scenario of a phishing or a wishing or some other thing, and they could collect information of the executives who are decision makers, or pose as if the caller is from a certain company in which for which they are providing services, and this generally happens. And what the other most important thing that one needs to keep in mind is, when an agent logs in from home, what are the measures that are already put in place to capture his audit trails, starting from authentication to access the applications that he accesses, and so on. So that is one important thing that one needs to keep in mind. Otherwise, since the threat vector can emanate from anywhere, the other important thing is the risk team should assess and identify heuristics in terms of how a particular event is transforming, and so on. So important thing is a good risk assessment will provide insights in terms of as to what are the various kinds of risks that could come in.
Sure. Thanks, Madhu. I think to summarize your thing, one is risk assessment, and then cybersecurity, close cybersecurity monitoring, which is to monitor all the activities that is happening with respect to work from home. So to add to that, also links up with our learnings as well, that monitoring is very, very important, considering the fact that people today have now privileged access outside outside physical data centers or environments. So that's very good. Thanks, Madhu, for that. I think there's one question. So there's a lot of good questions. I hope it's okay with panelists that I focus on the question that is coming in, so that a lot of good questions that are coming in. So the next question that I've got is, in today's lockdown, it's from Alan. So in today's lockdown scenarios, what is an approach if an organization is breached and needs to perform a forensic analysis? Since due to lockdown and logistic issue, an effective analysis will not be possible. So what will you suggest in such a scenario? So maybe I'll probably, if anyone wants to answer, other than Renju, of course, is the right person, but any among the either Sanjeev or Madhu wants to take it first and then give it to Renju.
Maybe I can make one attempt here. So see, the point is, for forensic, otherwise scenario, what would have happened, right? See, in forensic, if let's say it was not a lockdown, if it was open, then ideally what happens is there is a panic, right? And then there is a panic, and then you need to arrive at that this particular system or the actor or the entities, typically I'll call about the subject, right, needs to be isolated. So that the first thing is that do not tamper so that there are evidences which could be intact, right? So if a forensic is done, then first of all, remotely can you cut out any kind of transmission incoming or outgoing from the system or the subject in place, right? That doesn't require you to be in office. Okay, if you had a BCP or so, this could be a problem in your local premise or in production. If it is production, then try to invoke DR depending on the depth of the problem. If it is in office, then anyway you are on the BCP. So the best thing about COVID is that the strength of the BCP is now being checked, right? That you are able, all of a sudden COVID has forced your office shut, right? So forensic, if you had a good BCP practices, then there is no reason why you should not be able to isolate that system and still be able to work, right? then I'm sure if there are adequate logging and monitoring, then are there a peripheral task which can be done. So in my view, isolation and limited connectivity, stopping incoming and outgoing, and I'm sure when I say logging, I also cover taking a regular snapshot of the system you have, so that if it requires, then you have the images in place. So these are few things. If you have backup, if you are able to invoke BCP, if you are able to isolate system, if you have sufficient logging, even during lockdown, you are sufficiently at home, and you should be able to do a fair bit. Yeah.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Renju, a quick one from your side. We've got 10 minutes left for the Q&A, so just want to cover as many questions. We've got a lot of questions here. So.
Sure. So I think Sanjeev has clearly mentioned what can be immediately done. Just to add to Sanjeev's viewpoint, the question that we need to ask is whether are you doing a instant response or are you doing a forensics activity? So the main difference is that instant response that you need to stop or prevent a particular breach, and the forensics is to just basically understand how it would have happened. Now, for an instant response, then definitely we'll suggest tools like FastIR and remote forensics tools like GRR and Raptor, through which you can basically understand which of these systems could have been affected, which files as a connection is trying to connect, and those information we can able to connect. With respect to forensics part of it, definitely connect transmission and maybe wait for you to get back to your office for taking the forensics image part of it, because remotely getting the image is very difficult part of it. So these days, a lot of our PFI projects has been actually being stopped because due to COVID situations, the imaging is not working. So we're doing remote forensics to do an instant response so that we can able to contain that particular incident.
Thanks, Renju. I think that I know you guys have done some good work on the remote forensic stuff. So this question is for me by Devki, but of course I have the veterans here, so I will ask them first. So she says, what is the top 5 risks you see in contactless mobile transactions, which is essentially coming in? So I know this is a pet subject for Sanjeev, contactless mobile transactions. So Sanjeev, you want to go first, and then probably I'll give it to Viswanath to answer that.
See, I think contactless mobile transactions, the only problem I'll possibly see is that if you remove the floor limit for PIN, and if you remove the floor limit for PIN, and if you have an app which can really imitate your terminal. Otherwise, I think it's fairly safe. I think I'll give my experience behind it. I'll give it my backing of my experience behind it. But they are fairly safe. I mean the way DDA has been planned, the dynamic data auth, and followed by the objects ARQC. I'm sorry, it is getting a bit tech, but then I saw in the poll that there were 25% fintech folks, right? So there are the way you have the ARQC, the way you have crypto being done, it's fairly safe. And coupled with the PIN, and especially the way the central banks are taking it beyond 2,000 rupees, you anyway have to enter PIN. The moment PIN comes, if anybody knows how the PIN is secured, it's fairly safe. Now coming back to contactless coupled with the tokens, right? Tokens are equivalent to the domain specific, usage specific. So you have the token in the sense it is same surrogate of PAN. Through the host card emulation, it gets embedded in your Apple Pay or Samsung Pay. When you tap your phone, it emits the PAN. But this is not, mind you, this is not your real PAN. It is a surrogate PAN. So very limited exposure. So while it brings the ease, at the same time, attack vectors can be increasing. There could be a potent risk to it, but at the same time, community is working towards to make it as secure as possible. Of course, what was a transaction on a given EMV card insertion commands, which were around 23 or to 24. From there it comes down to 5. It saves significant checkout time. At the same time, security postures have been improved, and I don't see there is any reason for one to be worried unless on the acquiring side some keys go wrong, unless we improve the threshold beyond 2,000 rupees, or maybe outside India, it's more than it's close to $60-70. It has to be incentive also, right? So those who want to attack should find sufficient incentive to attack also, right? So keeping that in mind, in my 2 cents, I'll give my backing to this, that this is contactless is here to stay, and I think it has got sufficient, security inbuilt into it. And those who have slight worry, they are anyway going on the token, and token rails are further bringing the exposure down by issuing, surrogate PAN.
Sure. I think Sanjeev has very well explained. So just to add to that, Devki, is so what Sanjeev said is about the host caste, the HCE technology, and then the secure element technology. So both these have their own risks, which are there. But as Sanjeev rightly mentioned, there are a lot of other transactional or business logic-wise de-risking approaches that many organizations have taken, and fairly, I think everyone is cognizant of how to address those kinds of risks. So thanks, Sanjeev, for that. I've got a lot of questions. So in the interest of making sure that I answer as many questions as possible, I've tried to. I'm just going through. So one question is, one which is coming is, what are the evolved security threats we see due to, and this is very much related to our topic of the panel, which is past, present, and future. How is this COVID-19 going to impact the future cybersecurity threat landscape, right? So how is this? How will the cybersecurity threats change moving forward, and what is that we can do in order to not wait for another breach to happen, but what can we do now in order to safeguard ourselves? So Viswanath, do you want to give it?
See, the COVID has changed a lot of things. Going forward, we'll look at more and more employees using their own devices, bring your own devices, and of course the safety and security of the office environment won't be there. So in case, so a lot of organizations have done immense amount of outsourcing. So even the outsourced employees are sometimes within your premises. To that extent, you're kind of ensuring that it's a safe and secure work environment, paperless work environment, no phones allowed, etc., etc. So now with the work from home coming in, though people have got VPN access, sometimes sensitive information is available in the systems which one is accessing using the VPN as well. So those things are at kind of risk. And of course, we also need to look at, so therefore that is from an access control point of view. Of course, another aspect which you have to look at is how will you secure the devices of employees if they use their own devices. So that's the way it's kind of going to be. So these two things are the areas where I think that cybersecurity will need to evolve much more thanks to COVID.
Thanks, Viswanath. Question here, the next question that we've just got 2 minutes on the clock. What are the 3 value additions does PCI compliance have offered to small and medium enterprise wallet payment organization? So this question is from Samir, which says that what are the 3 value additions that a compliance like PCI DSS for a small to medium-sized wallet payment organization provide? Anyone wants to take that in the panel?
I can take that.
Sure, please go ahead, Sanjeev.
So see, the point is that PCI has got, based on your transaction count and amount, they have self-assessment, right? Self-assessment questionnaires. Again, I say, I hate to use the word, a compliance, right? So again, sorry again, right? The second time. So as long as you are adhering to it, if you take your questions, the SAQs, self-assessment questionnaires, seriously enough, and give it a very serious attempt, it has got a lot to enforce discipline across the company as such, right? For a fintech, I think I'll just say one line here. If somebody is attempting an attack, there is an incentive to steal the data, right? So will you keep the data in rest so it in the useful state? If the data at rest is not in useful state, somebody takes the disk and puts anywhere, it's useless for him to take out. So what I mean here is, even if you have the data in your database, the column encryption should not be decrypted by DBA by passphrase. Split the job of DBA in the part stays in the token vault, part in the DB, part in the application side. Unless entire company pollutes, the data cannot go out, right? So I think you can make it a bit tougher, harder and harder. And PCI SAQs, I think they help you identify the kind of disciplines you follow. And these are the solutions when you try to attempt to make an answer to those, right? That make data useless, data in transit. Why only bother about the channels secure the data itself? So even it is a secure channel, that on the SSL you encrypt the data also, right? So I mean, there are many ways which you get to learn from there. If you try to go by a specific object of each line, you can interpret in your favor. You can make your work lighter or tougher. But what we have seen as a company is encrypt data at source, encrypt data at transit, keep data in the useless state. I mean, I think keep on going, because we are PCI DSS, PA DSS, PCI PIN. So I think we really get into the get into it, and I personally invoke it that please adhere to it rather than complying. Thank you.
Sure, fantastic. I think we're about time. So what I would do is, I think it's a very interesting discussion. We've got a lot of very good questions coming from the audience. I've not been able to do justice, but I'm sure that we will take a lot of those questions and answer. I've tried to focus the questions on the subject that we are here today. So pardon me for in case I've not answered all your questions. I've not taken up all the questions here. But then we will see if we can pull those questions which are unanswered and reply. So before I switch to the PPT, one phrase summary by each of the panelists to close this panel and then move, complete the rest. So Madhu, do you want to just give one phrase, if you want to summarize, what will that one phrase summary be of the entire discussion that we did today? What comes to your mind?
See, at the first and foremost is time is essence. So making sure that the right information is available at the right time, actions are taken at the right moment, is a very important, it's a key important aspect.
Sure, thanks Madhu. Viswanath, one phrase summary.
I would say plans don't work as long as they remain in a document, unless it is put to use, and and unless it is simulated. So I think that will be one line which I would like to.
Simulation. Yeah. Sanjeev.
Simulation and not just planning. Yeah.
Not planning. Okay.
No, I'll just add. Add to what my two colleagues here have said. That again, and I'll possibly repeat fourth time, right? Add the word adherence in your dictionary from now onwards. Compliance is mere eyewash. Adherence is your self-bound duty. Adhere to it. And de-incentivize the risk as much as you can.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Renju. Yep. Renju, go ahead.
Right.
You're muted.
Yeah. Mine will be continuous monitoring, because we can definitely detect a breach and prevent it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the panelists for those lovely, interactive session. Really appreciate it. As we are short on time, just want to quickly close the session today. We've got from my side, what I believe is that the entire forensic learnings, the concept was that can we learn from them so that we could actually improve our security posture. So that's been the entire purpose of this SISA top 5 forensic learnings. We've seen a lot of forensic reports which have given a lot of causes and consequences, but our focus has been on how do we use these learnings, how do we use these forensic investigations findings as learnings and improve our security posture. So you could get a copy of that. It's still not up on our website, but till it comes on our website, you could actually, if you're a customer of SISA, you could write to your account manager, and they would be happy to give you a copy of this report. In case you are not, and you've, I see a lot of people join from different domains. So you could write to my colleague Ashwini Kumar. His email ID is on the screen here, and you could get a copy of this report. And we'll be happy to hear your feedback and see how we could improve, as a community, from these forensic learnings and make it better. So with that note, I thank each one of you. I would like to thank Ms. Rama Vedhashree from DSCI for having taken her valuable time to launch a report. I would like to thank Viswanath from NPCI, Sanjeev Kumar from Pine Labs, Madhusudhan from HGS, and my colleague Renju, who leads our forensic practice. So thank you very much for joining. In case you find this webinar useful, we would like to hear from you in any which way, and get more things. So one thing before I let you guys go, we'll try to do a quick poll in terms of how you found this webinar, so that it will help us improve as we move forward. So I'm just launching the poll. So quick feedback from all of you would help us improve as an organization, or motivate us to do this in the future. So thank you. So just give a couple of seconds and we'll close this. All right. So we got a very thanks for your feedback. And in case you want to follow through on us, we are available on LinkedIn. This is our LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter handle. So please follow us, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you, everyone, for your valuable time, and hope to see you in the future. Thank you.